All right, I'm going to start some kirtan, like 5-10 minutes.
Yep.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashadyadesha Tadine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Get out of here.
Hare Krishna. Dee, do I need to make something happening that also when you speak, because I pinned myself, I think I'm supposed to do that.
You can spotlight yourself.
Yeah, I did that, I think, but here it's just pinning the option, but it's probably the same like spotlighting.
Yeah.
And now when you speak, I don't see you, but is it
So
supposed
you
when you
can the spotlight back on me?
Mm-hmm.
Let me
Spotlight.
see how
I can just spotlight for everyone, but maybe I just put.
Yeah, I think
anyway.
now I'm spotlighted. You changed it back.
No.
Yeah, it's fine. Thank you. Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're joined with Keshava Madhava Prabhu, who's actually got a background in psychiatry and psychology, but he's also got a very big interest into the Vedic philosophy and, of course, all things pastimes and creations. So this is the second session of our series that we've called The Pastime of Creation, where we're looking at all of Krishna's activities, really, which we call pastimes. So last session we looked at the significance of Shashti Leela and the spiritual and the prime spiritual manifestation and the material creation. So we're looking to, I think, do a bit of a summary and sort of recap of what was discussed last week, and also to go into more detail during this week's session. And of course, this is a very interactive, session that we're going to do. So the more the questions you have to ask, the better. If you don't feel comfortable putting your camera on and sort of asking the question on camera, please just unmute yourself and ask a question, or feel free to put that on the chat. Those of you that are joining us, I can see there's, I think, 1 or 2 people watching us on Facebook. So if you're watching it live on Facebook, do feel free to put the comments on there if you've got any questions, and I'll be looking at the Facebook feed, and I'm more than happy to field questions on Facebook as well. So without any further ado, I'm just going to hand back to Keshava Madhava Prabhu to take us through the session today. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Yes, also from my side, thanks to everyone who joined today. As far as I see, I think those who joined today were not present the last session, as far as I remember, at least. So glad also to have some new members of this session. Yes, the overview from last time, we established, or better, we looked at how Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of that movement, established the importance and significance of the Shrishti Leela, or the pastime of creation. And we found that in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 4th chapter, where King Parikshit is putting questions in front of Shukadev Goswami in regards to the creations and to the creation pastime. And Srila Prabhupada in many points was highlighting the significance that it is, first of all, and for once, it is the natural sequence of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The 12 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam are considered to be a representation of the deity, and the deity is being looked at in the following way. You start with the feet and gradually look upwards to the face of Krishna. And it is considered not so proper or appropriate if you just look directly in the face, which is compared to the Leelas, which are more intimate or more advanced. And so the first 2 cantos represent the lotus feet of Krishna, and then gradually going upwards, also the other cantos of the Bhagavatam represent different parts of the body of Krishna. And in the second particular canto, or in the 3rd canto, we find a lot of detail about the Shrishti Leela, or the pastimes of creation. And Srila Prabhupada pointed out these are meant particular for those who are still influenced by the material energy. So I guess it's safe to say that applies to all of us, to me certainly, because also this pastime is connected to what is happening to us right now, because we are in the middle of this creation. We have a material body that and we don't know how many it is. Certainly, we traveled already through many how to say, states of material existence. So it is said Sri Prabhupada compares it also to this Krishna Katha on these subject matters to an injection to a person who has a disease. So like, of course, and for the disease, you need according to which state and whatever disease you have, you need a proper injection at a proper time. And Sri Prabhupada says this particular pastimes, this aspects of Krishna are particularly relevant or have a particular significance for the spiritual healing of all those who are still affected by material energy, because then we can understand the workings of the material energy. How is Krishna involved? How is Krishna relating to us within that pastime? So these are things we discussed last time, and we already gave also a bit of an overview of how Krishna has different forms in which he performs that pastime. That actually Krishna himself has directly nothing to do with the creation, but all his forms that are involved, they perform the Shrishti Lila. And we also, in the first part of our today's session, we will hear again more about the expansions of Krishna that are involved with the creation. Technically called the Vishnu Tattva, means the forms of Krishna, which are always called Vishnu, and they have the four-armed feature. The word tattva might be of significance. The word tattva is used differently, can be used as truth or as category. We speak of a tattva in the sense of, truth or category. But also an interesting meaning is the essential identity of someone or something. So if we speak of Vishnu Tattva, we speak also about the essential identity of this particular form and its particular pastimes and qualities and so on, which are there. Yes, I think this is shortly what we covered last time. We heard about that there are three different Vishnu forms, which are called the Purusha avatars. Purusha means person, also means enjoyer, means also controller, and avatar is a form that descends. I also purposefully do not use the term incarnation. It's still often used, but if you look closer to the word incarnare, that it's in English also to become flesh. And one of our essential philosophical teachings is that Krishna has no material body, or God does never accept a body of flesh. So incarnation might be referred to jiva who accepts a material body, but in terms of Krishna's forms, it is actually more appropriate and accurate to always use the term avatar, a form of Krishna which descends from the spiritual world and performs pastime. So we heard of an old overview, which we don't go through in detail. If someone has an interest or need, we can again show also the slide with the categories of the avatars and how Krishna is actually the supreme cause of all avatars. So in part 2, today we want to cover the spiritual manifestation at first. And I also would like to shortly say why I choose to start there. I could theoretically also say, why not start with the material creation? The Brahma Samhita is a scripture which is very potent when it comes to that topic of Shrishti Lila, the pastime of creation. It is given by Lord Brahma, the creator God within the universe. Also, last time we discussed already a bit about him and his position, and also our Sampradaya. He's the beginning of our Sampradaya, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. Brahma is our first guru, and he happens to be the creator God within what is called secondary creation. we established there's primary creation. This is done by Vishnu. And then there's secondary creation, which is done by Lord Brahma. The details of the secondary creation will be part of another session. There's a lot of material, so we could cover actually quite a few sessions with that. And the Brahma Samhita is a work that has been discovered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in South India. I would have to see the name. Yeah, Tiruvata in South India, in I think the state of Kerala. This is a beautiful Mahavishnu temple where like there's a deity of Vishnu laying on Anantashesh. And there Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu discovered the 5th chapter of the Brahma Samhita. We don't have the whole Brahma Samhita, only the 5th chapter. And it is in the first part describing the spiritual manifestation. This is how it starts. The Brahma Samhita is invoking, of course, the Supreme Personality of Godhead by celebrating him as Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anarya Adyar Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. That Krishna is the supreme cause of all causes, which has no other cause. He's the supreme controller, and from him everything emanates. And then it continues with descriptions of the spiritual world, and therefore I also want to follow that example of the Sri Brahma Samhita and start act from the spiritual world and then move into what is the material world. The spiritual world and the material world, or we call it more distinctively spiritual manifestation and material creation. I will later on elaborate a bit on that. They relate to each other like an object and its reflection. The spiritual world is considered the object and the material world the reflection of that object. And in a reflection, what happens? We have less of the object. If I'm reflected in a mirror, for example, you only have the visual. You don't have any other sensual features like the smell or the touch or the audible aspects. You only see in a reflection something. And the Bhagavad Gita, or in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna himself also uses a metaphor that describes the spiritual and material world and their relationship. And this is in the 15th chapter, which is called the Yoga of the Supreme Person. And there he speaks of a big banyan tree. I assume all of you who are present know what a banyan tree is. This huge, how to say, creature which has where it's sometimes not anymore clear what is root, what is the, how do you say in English, ast, the wick, not twigs. Yeah. Anyway, this is they can become enormous. I don't know how many kilometers in diameter they can become. They're quite huge trees. And it said the reflection of the tree relates to the original tree like the spiritual material world. The branches show upwards and the roots downwards in the original, and then in the reflection, the roots show upwards and the branches downwards. So you couldn't climb on that tree theoretically, since it's a reflection. You can't pick the fruits of the tree. And similarly, it said this material world offers only a small fragmental part of the experience that can be have in the spiritual world, since this is only a so-called perverted reflection. So this is the core relationship of material and spiritual world. The spiritual world is the basis of the material world. Like if you take the analogy or the example with the reflection, then we know without the object that is being reflected, there would be no reflection. So similarly, all that is being presented to us in the phenomenal world has its origin in the spiritual world and wouldn't be here unless it were in some original form in the spiritual world. A material example might be genetics. Only that information that is in the genes or the genetic material can be passed on. Informations that are not there cannot manifest in another body. You know, if two people are white colored, they very unlikely. I mean, maybe there's this kind of dominant genes and this this genes which are not dominant but are repressed. I don't know what's the term.
Recessive gene, isn't it?
Recessive genes, perhaps. Yeah. So then maybe, but generally, so they could not bring forth something which is not within them. So this is also an argument used to defeat also monotheist or monistic perceptions of God and the spiritual world, that also phenomena like personality and individuality that we perceive within this world have their origin in the spiritual world. They wouldn't be here, they wouldn't be perceivable and as existing as a phenomena if they wouldn't have an original cause in the spiritual world. So this is an important philosophical argument. And so therefore also it makes sense to hear first a bit about the spiritual world and from there move to the material world, since also the Brahma Samhita guides us in this way. It's a very interesting journey. It starts there, then goes to the Vishnu forms and then to Lord Brahma is his biography. And then Brahma's whole story, how he came to be the creator of the universe, and then how he actually from descending into the material world, how it is about ascending again to the spiritual world. That's our goal. That's anyway the goal of Leela. Krishna wants to attract us to that we develop a desire to go back to Krishna or the spiritual world. So I will present you with a image because I find it important to have some visuals if we speak about all these things. It makes it certainly more tangible, and I hope you can, benefit from it. So this is from the famous Goloka chart. There are two versions of it, which I think in a very nice way illustrate the descriptions of the scriptures. Let's shortly speak of the difference between a spiritual manifestation and a material creation. Perhaps also someone who has an idea wants to give his comment on what is the distinction or main difference between a spiritual manifestation and a material creation. Anyway, we'll come to that. I leave it open. You can also write in the chat. I will get back to that. So here on this picture, we find in the center up there, we find a lotus. And this is a description that is given in the Brahma Samhita that we shall envision Goloka Vrindavan, or the supreme abode, the center of the spiritual world, as the center of the lotus flower, which represents the spiritual world. And there, the supreme form of Krishna, we established last time, Krishna is Bhagavan, or Swayam Bhagavan, the supreme original form. There he resides with his female aspect, Radharani. And also around them, there's so many, there are thousands, it's described thousands of lotus petals, which are also the residents of Gopas and Gopis, the associates of Radha and Krishna. And many spiritual planets emanate from there. And this is the center. And this is also the goal of the Brahmamatva Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya's spiritual efforts. Everyone is being invited to become again a resident of that supreme spiritual abode. But it might be that by nature, someone is also part of a different sphere of the spiritual world. We see on the left side, there's then Mathura Dham, which is very close. Dham means practically is the place or the holy place, we call it, of Mathura. This is in the material world, also the district or the geographical area in which Goloka Vrindavan or Vrindavan is being situated. And then we have from there going on Dwarka, where Krishna also manifests different forms or different degree of his potencies. To full extent, we find that in the spiritual world, Krishna has all in all 64 qualities, it is said, which are in themselves limitless. We as jivas, or like souls, we have 50 of these 64 qualities in minute quantity. So, but when Krishna expands himself, we heard last time, there is Swayam Prakash. That means the forms are completely identical. But then there are those what we call partial expansions, where Krishna changes his appearance and also the spiritual potency is changed. In Dwaraka, Krishna is just in a different mood. He's king. This we find there. I don't know if, you can see it slightly. It's written there pretty close to Golokadam. There's Dwarakadam, where he's more in a different mood. And then also comes Ayodhya. And there's the famous Ramayana, which of course depicts the pastimes of Sitaram. In Dwaraka, Krishna becomes Rukmini Dwarakadish. Sitaram, he has different form, different color. He is of a greenish complexion. And since he's Vishnu Tattva, he has only 60 of the 64 qualities to a very, very high extent. Let's shortly check. Anyone has an idea? What are these 4 qualities that only Krishna has in comparison to the Vishnu forms? All right, then I will name them to you. These qualities are being found in the nectar of devotion, and Krishna's top quality, which is the first of the 64 and also the last of the 64, is his unparalleled beauty. So Krishna's beauty cannot be topped by any of his forms. This makes him also the most attractive. Like even if other forms are extremely beautiful, we will hear today also of Mahavishnu's beauty, Narayan's beauty, and so on. Still, Vishnu cannot be topped. Krishna cannot be topped. This is one of his features. Then we all know, we see Krishna with the flute, and one of his qualities is that his flute play can enchant just every and any living entity, no matter how powerful it is. It is also the example is given of Lord Shiva, who is very staunch and very strong yogi, powerful, self-controlled. Nothing can agitate him. But when the flute of Krishna's, the sound of Krishna's flute entered his ears, it broke even his meditation, and he had to figure out where's the sound coming from. So this Krishna's most exquisite flute play is one of his features that is unique to him. And also he has different flutes, and also the different holes on the flute have different effects. There's one, or like how you call that in English, if he plays on one particular hole, that's only for Srimati Radharani. So there's one sound, or how you might call it, dedicated to only Srimati Radharani. Another sound can make the Yamuna flow backwards. And then again, another sound manifests all the 4 seasons at once. And so there's amazing descriptions what Krishna can do in the spiritual world, because it's a place of unbound spiritual potency, no limitations in nothing. This is Goloka Vrindavan. And yes, this was the second quality. And then the third and fourth is that he has the most, his devotees are equipped with the most sublime love of God, which is called prema. There might be other forms with other associates, but their prema is not as high or strong. The love of God is not so strong as with the devotees who are with Krishna. And also said his pastimes are the sweetest. This is the fourth quality. His pastimes are unparalleled in sweetness. So this is these 4 qualities make Krishna superior and unique compared to his other forms, like, for example, Sita, Ram. Or then we come to Haridam, which is down there where Lord Vishnu resides in the 4-armed form Lakshmi Narayan. He has, for example, powers like that his body can manifest all the universes, but we will hear about that. So these are the spiritual manifestations. Of course, I listed here how it proceeds downwards to the material world, since this is also a description we find in the Brahma Samhita, that the line between spiritual and material world is actually there where Maheshtam is, where Lord Shiva resides, in an original form which is called Sadashiva, which is actually belonging to the Vishnu form, so Vishnu Tattva, and then he manifests from there the Shiva, which we know in the material world, which becomes also Rudra, the destroyer. And then down there is Devidam, the material world, governed by Durga Devi. Durga means actually prison, and Durga Devi is the goddess of the prison in which we are in. So we can also already get a sense where we are at, and if we didn't so far. So this is a list of the spiritual manifestations. And let me come back to the question, like the main distinction between spiritual manifestation and material creation. What might that be? Feel free to guess. Maybe if you exactly know, it's also nice to share it. Only Krishna. There was a comment. Yeah. Which make Krishna unique. Only Krishna has relationships in all 5 rasas with his devotees. Yes, that's another aspect of Goloka Vrindavan. The topic of rasa I would also cover more elaborately in another session. Thank you for that comment.
Sorry, Prabhu, I had one question. So you said
Sure.
we are in Devi Dham, which is the prison. So how does that differ to? Is it just this material plane, or is that the classification of the spiritual sort of manifestation that we're living in?
The Devi Dham is actually outside the spiritual manifestations. I listed it with there since, okay, I could have made perhaps another slide, but there somehow the list is given like this also in the Brahma Samhita. But it is understood that from Mahesh Dham, there's the line which is called Vairaj, which is transcendental river. And then the spiritual energy is being transformed into what we call material energy, and then the Devi Dham. Essentially, it's also, of course, spiritual energy because the spiritual energy is the basis, but it's a transformation of Brahman. We will hear that when we hear more about Mahavishnu's workings. All right. Okay, so the main...
Thank you.
Yes, welcome. So the main difference between spiritual manifestation and material creation is that there's no time. We will also today cover more about Kala Shakti, the time factor. Spiritual manifestation means no beginning in time. That's something our mind cannot comprehend. We are used to think in terms of time and space. That's a necessity. But as I said, that in the spiritual world, things are nadi or beginningless, like we as living entities are beginningless. And at the same time, it expands. That gives us the difficulty when we say, okay, it enters the expanse. Then we imagine a state where it is now, and then expands, and there's the expanded state. And we must always think like that. But then we always have to think a certain time, timeline. That makes it difficult. But actually, the spiritual manifestations are not created; they eternally manifest. Whereas the material creations have a beginning in time, within time energy, and also an end. So they're being manifested and dissolved again. Whereas the spiritual worlds, they're always existing, but they might be accessible to the seer or not accessible. Then it's called manifest and unmanifest. So this is one of the core features. And this is why also the Vaikuntha worlds are called what they are. The term Vaikuntha means without fear. And we will hear today that the essential characteristic of the Kala Shakti or time factor is fear of death. That comes with it, with the Kala Shakti. So this would be so far for the spiritual manifestations. Are there any further comments or questions in regards to that? Otherwise, we will continue. All right, then let's start to the primary creation. primary creation is that what happens from when everything is still a spiritual world and gradually turns into what we call material world. What does that mean when someone raises his hand? Is this like a you want to ask?
I wanted to ask a question, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
Sure.
So I raised my hand. So I wanted to ask that you were mentioning how, one of the key differences between the spiritual and the material manifestation is the absence of time in the spiritual world. So my question was, is there any way in which we can experience that, experience of timelessness while being in the material world or in the material creation? Can we experience that in some way?
Yes. It is, though, connected with really conscious effort of introspection. All around us, we see time. Everything is defined by time. We can just see. We take a photograph of ourselves like 20 years ago and compare it, and you see the effect of time. Things change. Everything is changing in every minute, and the terms Sat and Asat are being used. Sat means that what has existence. Asat has no existence. So actually, the body has no existence. But what we can experience, although it might escape our perception very quickly, is that we internally, as the self, we actually do not fully relate to that change as it is ours. We see it happening, things change, and sometimes we might be surprised because we think ourselves different from that what changes. So the essential experience of I am this, or like when I speak of I think, or like the essential experience of this this is timeless. If you really try to get just in there, absorb in some meditation, introspection, you can sense that your deeper self or sense of self actually is completely not connected to any concept of time. It is, and that's it. It's not. At least this is also my experience so far. This is something we can observe within ourselves.
So as you mentioned that we can realize that like transcendental, timeless aspect of ourselves through introspection, do you think that, when we chanting, we can also experience that, when we chant, it seems that, could it be that we can get this experience when we chant, that there is no time? Would that be possible?
Essentially, yes, because the whole process of chanting, the word mantra, manas, what is the mind, and tra, that what liberates the mind from all material conditioning. So with the pure mind, yes, one can of course perceive or sense the transcendental reality or absolute reality. And successful chanting would also mean that we connect to the spiritual reality deeper and deeper and perceive the distinction between the Atma and the physical body. And then also automatically we perceive that what is called Sat or eternity aspect. And one method is what is also recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 11th canto, is that one should consciously endeavor to observe the temporary nature of things, like a plant that might grow gradually and then again dissolve and so on, to become an observer, and in this way take careful note of the temporary nature of things, and then also gradually distinguish oneself from, as the observer, from that what is being observed, because the observer remains constant, whereas that what is being observed in a deeper sense, that is not constant.
Can I ask one more question, but you might answer it later. You might have planned for this in your talk. So I'm just curious about that, why is it important for us to have, this knowledge, of the material world? I don't know if you're going to speak something about like the necessity of understanding the temporary nature, the changing nature, the dual nature, and how that knowledge is essential for us, I don't know, in our process of detachment from this world? Will you discuss that point and in a later stage?
That will come, certainly. It will be coming with the purpose of creation.
Okay.
Because in there we find certainly the answer to that question you just raised. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Welcome. All right, then I would continue with the primary creation. This is the creation performed by the Vishnu forms. And let me again show a picture. We last time heard about the Purusha avatars and Mahavishnu being the first of that Purusha avatars. Yes. This one. So we see up there's Krishna, and it's like a cloud that opens up by the sunshine of Krishna. And this is a description we also find in the Brahma Samhita, that the spiritual world is very radiant. The spiritual manifestations are full of light. There's also no darkness. Darkness is something that exists in the material world because Krishna arranges that the material world is shut off from light, so therefore can be darkness. And it's said similarly, as a cloud covers part of the sky as we see it here and might not allow sun rays to shine on a particular area. So here it's also said the spiritual sky becomes covered by a cloud which is called Mahat Tattva, which is the basic substance, material energy. And this substance, or like this energy, is being manifested by this Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu is also called Karanudakashiyai Vishnu. And we heard last time the names of the Vishnu forms describe their place of residence, or like in general, every name of Krishna describes his pastime, his form, his qualities. And so we can understand Karana is the cause, and he lays on the causal ocean, which is, if you see it from the Goloka chart from before, it is that area which is called Vairaj. We saw the different spheres of the spiritual world, and there's Maheshtam, where Lord Shiva is residing, and there's the borderline between material and spiritual world is called Vairaj, and it's said there on the Tatashta region. The Sanskrit is Tatashta, which is the line in between where you can exit, like go from on one side or the other. There, Mahavishnu is residing, and he's floating within that area, and he transforms the original Brahman into that which is called Mahatattva, and that which can cover then part of the spiritual sky. And we also get a concrete description of the proportions. Imagine a circle, and the circle is split into quarters. 3 quarters are spiritual world, and 1 quarter is material world. But since there's no limit to it, we must try to expand this circle unlimitedly. So then we have a proportion of how the material world relates to the spiritual world in size. So 1 quarter to 3 quarters. This is the size of the material world. And here we can see, yes, Mahavishnu is sleeping. Maybe some of you or one of you practices yoga, some simple Ashtanga yoga, probably some of you do. And you know there's breathing exercise involved. And breathing is something where, in a sense, it's simple. We do it without even noticing. It's something so easy. We do it also while asleep. And that's what we last time also pointed out, how it is Leela that Krishna performs these things even while asleep and without any effort. So Mahavishnu is seen here in this Yoga Nidra pose, which means he's in a transcendental slumber, which is represented by one of his energies. And in the sleep, he's performing this primary creation. And we can understand when we, for example, inhale, just take a breath and inhale and exhale fully and just observe what is happening. So there's a simple mechanism of your body. Oxygen or air comes in. Also, still some chemical changes are being done. What you exhale is not the same as what you inhale. Oxygen is being lesser, then there's called what, I don't know in English, colon dioxide, something that comes out of your body when you have processed the air. And also your skin is breathing. In every moment now when we sit, you might be cold or warm. If you're active, you might be sweating and whatever. So your skin is a very active organ that manifests certain chemicals or how to say secretions, which of course our body is not very how to say, it's not very attractive what comes out of it. That's the nature also of the material energy. It's not full of bliss and knowledge and eternity. It's rather the opposite character. It is temporary, full of suffering, which includes disgust and unhappiness, or like if there's no knowledge, we are covered with darkness. So this Vishnu, while he is sleeping and simply breathing in and out, what happens, his body is generating an unlimited number of universes through his skin pores. So let's get a short idea what that means in terms of size of Mahavishnu and also the duration of his breath. When we inhale and exhale now, we can meditate. Okay, it takes a few seconds, and then that's it. And then the next breath is coming. And also our skin pores, they're very tiny. Some people have bigger skin pores and you can see them. Others have smaller ones. You have to look closer. And it is said the Earth, our planet, in diameter or diameter, how you pronounce it, diameter, is 12,756 kilometers. This is the diameter of the Earth. So there's one planet in the universe. So, and it said the universe in diameter, according to Vedic version, is 4 billion miles. It's already, for me at least, too abstract. I can't even start to imagine what is 4 billion miles. What is in kilometers is still something different. And then it said the universe, as we see them here, they have coverings. The 5 basic elements of the creation form coverings of the universe, and they have a size. It starts with earth, then comes water, then comes fire, and then comes air, and then comes ether. So these 5 elements, one by another, they surround each universe, and each covering is 10 times bigger than the diameter of the universe. Means take 4 billion miles times 5, then you have the earth layer. Take this again times 5, then you have the water layer, and then it continues with fire. And there's a huge, even unthinkable size of a universe with shell. So this constitutes only the size of a skin pore of Mahavishnu. So we can start to be amazed and wonder how big is that Vishnu actually. So when he exhales unlimited universes like that, it said they come out of his pores as small eggs, golden eggs. And they, in due course of his exhaling, they grow a bit. And it's also in science confirmed that actually the universe expands to some degree and later on will shrink to some degree. And it said the Mahatattva that he manifests around them actually functions as a fertilizer. So these universal eggs are being put into the Mahatattva, and they react like also we see in this world, like a fertilizer and a seed. The fertilizer nourishes the seed or the plant so that it can grow. So Krishna, here we can see Vishnu as the original gardener. So we can in this way meditate about the Lord in our daily dealings. We see these things happening in the material world. We see about genetics, we see about gardening, we see all these things. So this way we can connect also that would be the phenomena of the material world. We connect them to the original activities of the Lord, like here or like with the breathing and exhaling, and with the skin, how the skin works. So in this way we can connect an experience of our daily life with an activity of the Lord, which is very close to us, because we are in one of these universes, in these shells. So we have, in this sense, we are directly involved in that pastime. It's also said, we will hear it later, that Vishnu, here in this picture, you see him, he is rather having closed eyes. So, but also he opens his eyes, and we will see that in the next picture. And he does something which is what is described in the Brahma Samhita. With his glance, he's actually activating the material energy. Here on this tiger, you see Durga Devi, the embodied material energy. And with his glance, he activates her. And the Brahma Samhita describes there are certain energies that come with that glance. And one is Rama Devi, which is called Yoga Maya, his inner energy. The other is Kala Shakti. So there we are this is already one of the topics we cover more today. The time energy is also part of his glance. And she is actually the main force that activates the material energy to manifest. Imagine also in chemistry, we see, or you can observe under the microscope, certain matter has different degrees of stability. It says some stability lasts, it is kind of forced together by, sometimes it's maybe gravity or like whatever. I don't know all these terms. I'm not so conversant with that. But the thing is, there's a force that holds the elements together. And if this force wouldn't be there, everything would just fall apart. So this is said, the Kala Shakti, time energy, is that force actually that makes the loose material elements that just float there in the Mahatattva, it makes them manifest further. Then this is called Prakriti. When it is not manifest, the term is called Pradhan, the unmanifest energy. And when it is getting more in the state of concrete elements, it's Prakriti, material nature. And this is one of the topics also of the Bhagavad Gita. So another thing that happens is, it relates to us, we are being transferred by this glance into the material energy. Said Mahavishnu is impregnating the material energy with the living entities. So another analogy we can take to meditate on that, as we see here, man and woman come together, man impregnates woman, and then a child is born. So similarly, Vishnu is impregnating the material energy with the souls, which are the living force, and they produce material bodies in which they can live and enjoy. So it also, Brahma Samhita points out that actually Mahavishnu is the creator of the jivas, or manifest the souls. This is a big topic, which has also some controversies. I'm just saying this is how it is in the Brahma Samhita. Srila Bhaktisana Saraswati Thakur is using the word creation or creating. And we will also hear how Srila Prabhupada gives another statement where the souls originate from. And in this glance is another thing that is important for the creation pastime, which we will cover in a later session. There also the original Shiva, Shambhu, is being manifested as like a dim reflection of that glance. And this Shiva becomes actually the masculine principle, Durga Devi the female principle, and actually these two, they are actually make the creation happening. Shambhu or Shiva, empowered by Vishnu, takes actually charge of creating the material world. So there's an transition from from Vishnu Tattva gradually to what we call Shiva Tattva. Now, Vishnu becomes gradually Shiva. So it's very fascinating. Yes, this is a bit of Mahavishnu's primary creation pastime. there are, of course, more detailed descriptions, and although this is quite detailed already, I guess. The Brahma Samhita gives a lot of information about that, also the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I would like to show you another picture, because there's a story relating to Krishna and Arjuna. They were visiting Mahavishnu. So let's also get some idea, like how does it look like there where he resides. There's a story in the Krishna book in the 89th chapter. I keep the story very short. A Brahmin living in Dwaraka, one of the realms of Krishna, where King Ugrasena was at the time ruling. He and his wife, of course, they wanted offspring. And it happened that their child just died after birth. And at that time, it was very... it was common that the king could be blamed for that, because it said if the king is very pious and powerful, these things don't happen. It's also due to the lack of spiritual qualification of the king. So he came to the king and blamed him quite intensely, called him a Brahmana, Dvij, like, was it Dvij? Practically being envious of Brahmanas. He called him greedy, he called him incompetent, and many other things he blamed him. So it was rather dramatic, and then left. And the thing is, it did not just happen once. It happened 9 times. 9 times he lost a child like this, and all the time, always he went to the king and complained like this. A very dramatic scene. But at the 9th time, it came to happen that Arjuna and Krishna were present. And Arjuna was wondering, saying, is there truly just no kshatriya, no one who can even pretend to protect you? And they were wondering, how is that? And Arjuna then made a promise, because he wanted to encourage the Brahmin, because the Brahmin had lost all faith in the kshatriyas, the ruling class or the kings. As we heard last time, kshatriya, kshat means hurt, and triya is to protect from. This is the dharma or nature of a kshatriya or king. And then he promised him that he will protect him his next time as a child. And he spoke kind of apparently criticizing to Krishna a bit. Okay, if you can protect them, so I will do, because he was more in a friendship mode with Krishna. And Arjuna was remembering how he actually gained from Lord Shiva a powerful weapon, because he was once fighting with Shiva and pleased Shiva by defeating Shiva. And so he was blessed with the weapon. And so it came that a Brahmin, again with his wife, they conceived, and Arjuna was called at that time, and in Dwaraka. And so he came then to the house of the Brahmin. They were about to conceive the child, and he was protecting his weapons, or like he blessed his weapons and so on. And he fired a bow, and he made practically, protection by mantras and weapon. And then what happened is the arrow and also the child just disappeared, like as usual. The child was born, cried, and then died practically, or was just taken away. And the Brahmana was completely devastated and spoke quite harshly to Arjuna, who was himself quite in a predicament, because Krishna, of course, wanted to teach him, all right, if you depend not on me, but on Shiva, okay, do so. And so, but then Krishna encouraged Arjuna and say, let's search for the son of the Brahmana, because Arjuna before, or better to say right after that, he traveled to all the planets. As described, he is a very powerful being, a mystic yogi practically. You can just transfer himself to all the planets in the universe. And he went practically to all the planetary systems, which are 14 in number, which is quite a lot. And even up in the highest in Brahma Loka, where no one can enter, he could enter. And he couldn't find sons of the Brahmin. And then Krishna took him on his chariot, and there's a famous story. Then they traveled through the universe, and they traveled up to the layers of the universe. We just heard before a bit about the layers of the universe, how huge they are. And the horses were afraid to move on. And then Krishna manifested his Sudarshan chakra. And the Sudarshan means Su means very nice or beautiful. And Darshan means vision. So practically a beautiful vision, something that allows you to see things. So he gave light, and they crossed through all the layers of the universe and came to the region where Mahavishnu is laying, the Vairaj. And this is described also in the Krishna book in the 89th chapter. And it is written here, after this, Lord Krishna and Arjuna entered a vast spiritual water. This spiritual water is called the Karana Ocean, which means that this ocean is the origin of the creation of the material world. This place is also known as Viraj, because it is free from the influence of the three qualities of the material world. In the Mrityunjaya Tantra, a Vedic literature, there is a vivid description of this Karana Ocean, or Viraj. It is stated there that the highest planetary system within the material world is Satyaloka, or Brahmaloka, beyond which are Rudraloka and Mahavishnuloka. Regarding this Mahavishnuloka, it is stated in the Brahma Samhita, Yakaranarnavajale Vajati Sma Yoga Nitram Ananta Jagat Andasa Romakupa. Lord Mahavishnu is lying in the Karana ocean. When he exhales, innumerable universes come into existence, and when he inhales, innumerable universes enter within him. In this way, the material creation is generated and again withdrawn. When Lord Krishna and Arjuna entered the water, it appeared that there was a strong hurricane of transcendental effulgence blowing, and the water of the Karana ocean was greatly agitated. By the grace of Lord Krishna, Arjuna had a unique experience of being able to see the very beautiful Karana ocean. So they went there, and now it's described how they see how Mahavishnu is residing there. Accompanied by Krishna, Arjuna saw a large palace within the water. There were many thousands of pillars and columns made of valuable jewels, and the glaring effulgence of those columns was so beautiful that Arjuna was charmed by it. Within that palace, Arjuna and Krishna saw the gigantic form of Anantadeva, who is also known as Shesha. This, for those who might not know, I guess all of you know this amazing snake bat or snake form where Vishnu is residing on. Lord Anantadev, or Shesha Naga, was in the form of a great serpent with thousands of hoods, each one decorated with valuable effulgent jewels, beautifully dazzling. So not again the feature spiritual world, which always means light. Everything is very fulfilled with this effulgent elements. Each of Anantadeva's hoods had two eyes, which appeared very fearful. His body was as wide as the mountaintop of Kailash, which is always covered with snow. His necks were bluish, as were his tongues. Thus Arjuna saw the Sheshanaga form, and he also saw that on the very soft white body of Sheshanaga, Lord Mahavishnu was lying very comfortably. And let's already see that. So here we have one of the rare pictures of this scenery. So he appeared all pervading and very powerful, and Arjuna could understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead in that form is known as Purushottama. He's beyond the material world. Tama means darkness, and Ut means above. Lord Mahavishnu's helmet was bedecked with valuable jewels, and his beautiful earrings enhanced the beauty of the curling hair of his head. Lord Mahavishnu had 8 arms, all very long, reaching to his knees. His neck was decorated with the Kaustuba jewel, and his chest was marked with the symbol of Srivatsa, which means the resting place of the goddess of fortune. The Lord wore a garland of lotus flowers down to his knees. This long garland is known as the Vaichayanti garland. So then they speak to him. Of course, Krishna pays obeisances. Arjuna pays obeisances. Krishna too, because it's a very powerful being. 8 arms also means the is always the opulence in the foreground, the different powers and shaktis that accompany this form. And then Mahavishnu reveals to them that actually he took the sons of the Brahma to him so that these two may pay him a visit. So that was practically the pastime. And he said, "My dear Krishna and Arjuna, I was very eager to see you both, and therefore I arranged to take away the babies of the Brahmana and keep them here. I have been expecting to see you both at this palace. You have appeared in the material world as my incarnations in order to minimize the force of the demoniac persons who burden the world. Now, after killing all these unwanted demons, you will please come back to me. The two of you are incarnations of the great sage Nara Narayan, although you are both complete in yourselves. To protect the devotees and to annihilate the demons, and especially to establish religious principles in the world so that peace and tranquility may continue, you are teaching the basic principles of factual religion so that the people of the world may follow you and thereby be peaceful and prosperous." So here we get a bit of insights into the spiritual world, into Mahavishnu as a person, what he does. So I think this was quite a lot of information. Let's again stop here if there are any comments or questions in this regard, or something that should be again maybe repeated.
Can't see any questions on the chat or Facebook, so I think you've stunned us into silence. Far too many things going over my head, frantically taking notes.
For clarification, is Sadashiva a form of Mahavishnu? No, actually, he's. Oh wait, yes, Sadashiva. So the Brahma Samhita describes this Mahashiva Mahavishnu, yes, is manifesting Sadashiva. Yes. Simply, technically, we can. The description is last time we saw this overview. Sure, Shardi Ras, I will get in a moment. We can cover them. That there's Swayam Bhagavan, and then comes Balaram as the first expansion. And then it's said there's the first quadruple expansion, which is Vishnu forms. The spiritual manifestation, we heard about the lotus, and the Brahma Samhita further describes this region is surrounded by Shvetadvip, which is a square region around it, and on all four directions are the first four expansions of Vasudev, Shankarshan, Pratyum, Aniruddha. And from the first expansion, from Shankarshan comes Narayan. This is actually the one in Vaikuntha where Lakshmi Narayan is being, and he again manifests a second quadruple form, like four Vishnus. And from this Shankarshan, Mahavishnu comes, and this Shankarshan, this Mahavishnu manifests Sadashiva. Yes, quite many forms, but that's the thing with Vishnu and Krishna. Yes, all these unlimited forms, which slightly different potencies and features, and they all perform these amazing pastimes. So yeah, there were some more questions.
Sorry, on the question of form, so where do we come from? Obviously, this was done like thousands and millions of years. So how did we, because how does that material manifestation connect with the Atma or the super soul, and kind of how does everything kind of fit in together from that initial creation, Mahavishnu's creation?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that, because another quote in the 89th chapter of the Krishna book, there's in this description when they enter this causal ocean, it's also described that as said before, Krishna used his Sudarshan chakra to bring light, and it's said here, Srila Prabhupada writes, As the sun disk and the sunshine cannot be separated, Krishna and his bodily rays, the Brahma Jyoti, the effulgence, cannot be separated. Thus, Krishna claims that the Brahma Jyoti is he himself. This is clearly stated in the Harivamsha. When Krishna says Aham Saha, the Brahma Jyoti is a combination of the minute particles known as spiritual sparks or the living entities known as Chitkana. So actually the Brahma Jyoti, this effulgence, is consisting of innumerable living entities, the souls, the jivas there in the spiritual sphere already. In the Vedic words, so Ham or I am Brahma Jyoti can also be applied to the living entities who can also claim to belong to the Brahma Jyoti. In the Harivamsa, Krishna further explains, this Brahma Jyoti is an expansion of my spiritual energy. So we originate from Krishna. Here it is mentioned particularly the Brahma Jyoti, his spiritual effulgence. And then the Brahma Samhita states that Mahavishnu, who is also, of course, part, in a sense, he is not different from Krishna. So also he has some radiation. He has some, of course, he has energies within where he manifests jivas because he's considered the creator of unlimited or thousands of living entities. So, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Jaiva Dharma, he's also describing, or in other books, that the living entities, they come from Mahavishnu. This brings the philosophical problem again of time. If we say that, we assume the living entities have a beginning, although they are eternal. So this will remain a problem. So let's just go with the descriptions. And it's said when they come out of Mahavishnu's glands, they see both. We see the spiritual manifestation in a sense because it's the Vairaj, the Tatashta region, and we see the material nature. And there is apparently already an inclination of the jiva. It can want, or it can have the desire to be still a Purusha for himself. And then it enters the material world because it is tempting by also some glittering nature. But it can also, when it recognizes itself as an eternal servant of the Lord, it enters the Vaikuntha sphere. So this is a description Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives, and there is in the jiva, since we inherit, let's go back to genetics, we inherit certain traits with this body. So also we inherit qualities of Krishna to a minute extent, and one of these is enjoyer and controller. This is partially also within the jiva, and Krishna grants us, if we want to become more enjoyer and controller than we are, he provides the illusion in which it is possible. He puts us practically asleep and we can dream that, which we cannot in fact do like this. So we also say in the material world, go on dreaming, or dream about it. You know, if you want to do something that's actually not possible like this.
I think Shravadi had some questions.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, my light has gone off, so I'm not visible on camera. But I have a couple of questions. So I got another question while you were answering Dee's question. So my question is that you were mentioning how the jiva, or all souls that form the category of jiva tattva, we have this unique position that we can choose. We can choose to either be, engaged in the spiritual realm, or we can choose to be, engaged in the material energy. So it's like, we're unique in that sense. So my question is that, if we look at Krishna's primary associates, they obviously they're not jiva tattva, and they're always loving Krishna, and it's never going to change. So my question is it like, why does Krishna create, the jivas, the marginal energy? Why does he create, us with that ability to choose to love him or not love him? Is it just like another like expansion of rasa, because obviously the rasa is different for us, because we need to consciously choose to love Krishna versus like Mother Yashoda, it's not an option for her. You know, it's like she needs to love Krishna. There's not another, you know, it's the only way she exists.
She's forced to.
She's forced to love Krishna. But so it's like, why does Krishna create, you know, because I know that always the argument that's always used is they say that for love, there needs to be free will. But it seems that Krishna's primary associates, they don't have the will to choose to not to love him. You know, they're bound to love him. So why do we get that decision? Why did he create us, basically, with that?
Yeah, I think this is a large, I mean, the question is not, it comes, how to say, brings with it many sub-questions and a actually rather elaborate answer. I would suggest we actually can dedicate a bigger part of another session to that, because Jiva Tattva in itself is an extensive topic. And I got quite a few quotes and texts which probably will be very useful for discussing that. Essentially, what is in the Ishopanishad, I can also next time provide the purport. Srila Prabhupada explains, similar like a family man, he gives the example, wants to extend himself, like enjoy family atmosphere. He creates children which are meant to be part of the family, so that all involved can have a family experience in the most positive sense, of course. So he wants to enjoy that. And so in this sense, he said he also created manifested the jivas so that they can be in a family relationship with Krishna, so to speak. And so then enjoy him, because he's by nature the most enjoyable object. It said the jivas are called the separated or energy, something which is a bit some apparently distinct from him. He's calling it in the Bhagavad Gita like this. Whereas the Vishnu Tattvas are like his direct expansions. They are him, do what he wants. They don't act separately. So, but the jivas, yeah, there's a different type of relationship possible, because they are granted a different type of individuality and nature. They're and in this way, Krishna can have a different way of enjoying himself, his energies. But yeah, we can answer that a bit more elaborately in another session. All right.
Yes, thank you. I know that's a big topic. I'm just curious about that.
Sure, we should be. It's an important topic, yeah.
And then my other question was, you know, that you were mentioning how we can meditate upon how like our daily experience. For instance, you were mentioning, you know, the breathing, and you know how things are like entering from, like exiting from our skin, how, you know, we are like a microcosm of the macrocosm. So whatever, you know, we are doing, like Krishna is just doing on a much larger level. And you know that much larger level, it's a bit of a understatement, but you know, whatever we're experiencing, it's like it's a small reflection of something much bigger. So we can meditate, you know, upon that. So my question is that sufficient? Because like if I read, like especially if I read Bhagavatam and I read creation, like I find it very interesting, but I can't say that I comprehend it. You know, I'm just like, oh wow, that's amazing, oh that's amazing, but it's like it's not like I really understand. So you know, my question is, if we are, you know, at least accepting it and not, you know, not resisting it, is that sufficient? And do we actually need to come to a point where we understand it? Or is it, you know, is it sufficient if we just, you know, accept it and we meditate upon what we can relate to?
Yes, I would agree with this, just what you, the last thing you said. This amazement, this is important, because amazement and this inclination to hear about it and to accept it means faith. And this is important. Actually, essentially, the scriptures do not urge us as much to understand as they urge us to have faith in these things we don't understand. So actually, essentially, in spiritual life, we are challenged with so many things that are beyond our capacity to understand. And what the Shastras say is, okay, if you have faith in that, faithfully accept them, it will allow you to come closer to revelation of these things. Because we, it's also said, even a pure devotee, Shukadev Goswami is stating that in the Bhagavatam, even a pure devotee is not capable to understand the workings of the material energy fully. Only Krishna himself can understand that. We can grasp a certain amount, and my experience is also the things that we are amazed with, like these little meditations, they make it for me to have the effect. I can deepen my chanting better with it. If this is on my mind when I chant, I'd connect differently also to Krishna, to the name, and to the person Krishna, and as if I would not have that. So it's more something that supports my mind in thinking of Krishna. Particularly these things that it's not about so much fully understanding them, but rather let's call it dwelling in these descriptions and just envision what's happening there. It's just amazing. And even if it would not be how to say scientifically accurate or whatever, still one have to give how to say. I have to give credit, even if it would be only an invention, let's say, of a creative mind. It would be a very creative mind, which you have to give credit for for such an amazing idea. So, yeah, like this.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. So would you say it is thus sufficient for us just to have faith that it is true, and for us to meditate, more on this, so that we can get to the stage where at least, even if we don't understand how Krishna creates, but our vision changes so that everything we see reminds us of Krishna. Because, if we get into creation, it's like, we learn later that, the every part of creation, like, the mountains and the trees and everything is also connected to some part of Krishna's universal form. So is if we can just think of Krishna without even like, okay, maybe I don't understand, how the mountains are his bones, but if I just see a mountain, I remember that is that basically that is sufficient for us.
I mean, maybe I would not use the word sufficient, but certainly very beneficial if you can do that. I think, as far as I understand, also Srila Prabhupada's mood and mission in writing all these purports and doing these translations, that he also wants us to be able to grasp these things as much as possible, at the same time highlighting it's more about faith than understanding. Because through faith we might understand things more deeply, or as I again said before, our path is actually the path of revelation. We also hear that later the story of Brahma is a story of endeavor. He first endeavored by his own. He has a body even of pure intelligence. That's another thing. His body is made of buddhi, intelligence, and he couldn't by his own strength understand Krishna. But when he performed yajna, when he with faith took up the how to say, when the syllables tapa was sent to him, perform austerity, when he faithfully applied that, when he listened to that voice, and then also received the mantra later on from Krishna's flute, actually, Gayatri mantra, then things became revealed to him. And he then, therefore, is considered a true knower of things. Therefore, we accept him as authority, because from him we say he has direct transcendental vision, and therefore his words are authoritative. But what he is describing is beyond the reach of intelligence. So therefore, intelligence is one of the tools that we should apply, and to the extent we can understand, try to understand. But it's much more about having an attitude of being limited and saying, I try to understand as much as possible, but rather asking Krishna, or like, to show the truth, to that he reveals it to us. This is actually our path.
So then it seems, if I just needed to summarize that very shortly, is that we need to desire to understand and have the faith that we could understand. But if we don't understand, that is not going to be an impediment. But we should always desire and not have an attitude of, no, this is beyond me. Because Krishna will then reveal. It's not that, it's not by our own strength.
Yes. Srila Prabhupada also says on many points why he writes all these books, or why it is so important that we should study them or here Bhagavatam class is that our faith in the holy name increases, so that we actually start really chant with conviction. And then it said the holy name reveals practically, or can reveal everything which is there to be revealed to us, also about our natural position or constitutional position to Krishna, our relationship to Krishna, the nature of Krishna. To whatever extent we are supposed to understand or be aware, the holy name can make it, and all the knowledge is there to strengthen our conviction and faith. And Srila Prabhupada, in his mood, it becomes so clear how he attacks scientists and philosophers with their practically arrogance, that they say what our mind and intellect can grasp is real, all the other things are nonsense. He challenges so intensely because he says, what is that? With such a limited mind, what can you understand? Yeah. I would say, since now we covered already the full time, we leave Kala Shakti for another session, because there's quite a few things also that go along with that. So I would suggest to maybe close it here. I enjoyed this session, and I think so far, everyone involved felt enthusiastic. So I would be happy to, of course, continue that. Yeah. Yeah, maybe from your side, any closing words or comments for the end?
Thank you. I really enjoyed the session, and I'm a bit of a philosophy geek at heart. So I felt like, I was literally back at school or university, taking loads of notes. And I think these are things that are quite important, because, we always focus on either the chanting or these things like the pastimes, the creation. It kind of, you find all these different lectures and on different topics, but these things are often overlooked. And I think these are such core components of the Vedic philosophy that we really do. And I know it's very intense, as in, you just need to really sort of break it down. And I think you've done a really good job in, breaking it down to sort of understandable chunks, because I'm sure, if you go in depth, we would have been completely lost. But no, I really look forward to looking at the time factor in the next session. And I just wanted to thank you for your time. Really enjoyed the session. I don't know if anybody else has any final questions or comments before we close the session. I can't see any on the chat. Sharadia, did you have any final remarks or comments?
Yes, I find it very interesting how Keshava Madhava Prabhu was mentioning how Prabhupada very strongly always criticized scientists if they only relied basically on empirical studies to explain how the universe came about, etc. Because actually our minds are so limited. Because it's very interesting, even in the field of science, there is a critique now, that there is a critique that since like the Industrial Revolution, we've become obsessed with with a particular form of science that's very empirical, and that we only have faith in that type of science. But before before that specific period in human history, people had a lot of more faith in things like philosophy, and also considered that as science. So it's very interesting that Prabhupada is not actually alone in this critique. And I think for us, it's just sometimes it seems that Prabhupada is a bit extreme in his critique, because we grew up in a society that's conditioned us to only have faith in empirical science. But we should recognize that that is our cultural conditioning, and humanity has not always had such strong faith in only empirical science.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, which is interesting what you say, having faith in science. They like to put faith as a how to say, quality of religious people, and as if it wouldn't matter in the science field, but they also have faith in a particular worldview. And yes, all right, thank you. Then let's close here, and looking forward to another session on that. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.